VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
We do thank you for joining us on Crosstalk today. Ladies and gentlemen, all over the world, you hear the shouts, the chants, the protests, the marches, the signs to stop the genocide. Well, their references are going to a certain geographic region around the world, but one location that has been totally absent from these protests is the womb. Yes, a genocide is taking place against pre-born children. According to numberofabortions.com, so far this year of 2025, more than 733,000 abortions have taken place. And that's surgical abortions and so forth, but there's more. You know, friends, that's more than the population of Wyoming or the population of Vermont or the population of Washington, D.C. That's this year alone. And so I asked the question, where is the outrage? Where are the marches? Where are the political speeches? Where are the shutdowns over this issue? Instead of no kings protest, there should be no killings protest. Well, joining us today to speak about this war on the unborn, we welcome back Reverend Jim Harden, President and CEO of CompassCare Pregnancy Services in New York. Theirs is one of the many centers targeted with criminal activity, including firebombs, vandalism, and threats. And Reverend Harden, good to have you back with us here on Crosstalk.
It's great to be back with you. Thanks for having me.
So this past Saturday, there were many leftist groups that came together for these No Kings protests. There were people linking arms, including those who want to take down our constitutional republic. There were communists, socialists, anti-Israel advocates, pro-abortion, pro-LGBT organizations, labor unions, teachers groups, and the list goes on. And before I have you comment on these, I want to play two audio clips. This one is from the No Kings protest taking place in Chicago, Illinois. Listen to this.
You gotta grab a gun. We gotta turn around the guns on this fascist system. These ICE agents gotta get shot and wiped out. The state machinery, that's a full display right there, has to get wiped out.
Hear that, folks? Wipe out. We need to shoot these ICE agents. We need to have the guns. And then as we go from Chicago, let's go out to No Kings, Seattle.
Who are you going to kill?
Nazis.
Who do you define as a Nazi?
What do you mean? It's pretty...
In this context, who's a Nazi?
Stephen Miller's a Nazi.
So you're going to kill Stephen Miller?
If I had the chance, yeah, I would.
I don't know if that's something I'd say on camera, bro.
Kill the Nazis, in this case, Stephen Miller. And Reverend Harden, I know that these is the very mentality of the leftist groups that, you were targeted with. Your facilities were firebombed, vandalized, and graffitied. Your comment on this?
Yeah, this is not, a grassroots movement that's just springing up out of the passion of, disaffected left-wing people that are just interested in abortion, women's rights, or environmentalism, or anything like that. This is a coordinated international Marxist insurgency. I've been saying this for at least 3.5 years after we were firebombed by pro-abortion Antifa, using the front group name Jane's Revenge. and so, what is Antifa? Unfortunately, I know more about Antifa than I ever wanted to know. It has its roots in, Bolshevik Russia during the revolution. It's Marxist in its roots, and their definition of fascism is simply capitalism. And so they're against anything that represents the constitutional rule of law, like the U.S., that's undergirded by the Judeo-Christian moral framework. The primary tenet to Marxism is atheism. They are vehemently opposed to Christianity and the free market, because that's what upholds or undergirds the current global nation-state system, which they have vowed to dismantle and destroy in an effort to pave the way for a global communism. So they're not interested in abortion. They're not interested in environmentalism. They're not interested in any of this stuff. What they're interested in is piggybacking off these left-wing movements as a recruitment tactic to engage in what the President Trump's former Pentagon expert in irregular warfare called, essentially fourth generation warfare, where these insurgents come in and amongst us, recruit people who are kind of weak-minded and disaffected on these issues, and then activate them in what they call these peaceful protests, and then seed these peaceful protests with paid violent aggressors to engage in direct action violence. And that's what we've been seeing all around. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I said, must be clear here. First, on that night, I was at an interview. I said, we must be clear. This is not an isolated event. This is just the most recent and a long line of Antifa Marxist terror. And they have a headquarters in Portland. They have a lot of activity going on in Buffalo, in Madison, Wisconsin, in New York City, and other places. But they also have major outposts in London, Berlin. And I've been saying, look, we have Antifa sympathizers in upper echelons of government, which we saw rearing their ugly head during the Biden administration because they got full reign. And that's why when we were attacked, we get $500,000 of damage, destroyed our facility. 2 firefighters were injured in putting out the blaze, and the FBI and the DOJ turned a blind eye. Meanwhile, Joe Biden signs an executive order not to investigate the terrorists, but to investigate the victims. Pregnancy centers.
Yep.
So what do we have going on here? This is not about. They simply changed the word fascist in these No Kings event to king. So they're going after the ability to create a civil war, create the prospect of a civil war. And my hope is that the violence is quelled and that federal law enforcement gets their act together and helps to educate local law enforcement about what's actually going on here.
Yeah, and as Speaker Johnson pointed out yesterday, he said if Donald Trump were a king, he said that the government would be open. He would order it open. If he were a king, these protests would not be taking place across the nation. He would stop those from taking place. So
yes.
Very interesting. And, at the same time, we have this war on the unborn. And, why do we not see the media universal or university campus demonstrations, or for that matter, United Nations resolutions to stop the genocide on the preborn?
Because they're not interested in life. They're not interested in human life. They don't actually believe that humanity is the crown of creation. We do. The constitutional rule of law, applies to everybody only if we have the same core belief that we're made in the image of God, we are created in His image, endowed by our Creator, capital C, with the unalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. This is the only basis for dignity and essentially universal respect for mankind. But there isn't that. And abortion represents a sickness. It represents a fundamental misunderstanding or denial of the truth about what it means to be human under God. You talk about how many kids have been killed just this year.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how many have been killed in the last 50 years.
Yes.
According to the World Health Organization, 73 million globally last year alone.
My.
If you add that up, you multiply that, let's just be conservative, 40 million children a year, be conservative, times 50 years, that's 2 billion children. That doesn't say anything about the children they would have gone on to have if they would have had families. That's 1/4 of the current global population. That sounds like an apocalypse.
Isn't even part of the shutdown that we're in right now with the government about Obamacare abortion funding?
Yes. Oh, one of the things that pro-abortion politicians in charge of the Democrat Party want is the ability to continue to decide who qualifies for protection of the law and who doesn't. That's what abortion gives them. It gives them power, absolute power, the ability to decide who lives and who dies. I mean, it's a slippery slope if you allow them to continue to have that power. Who are they going to choose next? The disaffected, the depressed, the disabled, the elderly, those who disagree? That's where we're going in America if we let this Antifa Marxism continue.
And that's where it is going. I mean, we're seeing, even isn't Governor Hochul right now having to decide on assisted, whether they call it medical aid in dying? I guess that sanitizes, the direct killing of the elderly or disabled in some regard. And we're seeing that movement grow all across the United States. Canada is just off the charts on this, as Netherlands and Belgium and other locations as well.
Yeah, God forbid that we embrace the blessing of taking care of our fellow man. They think that death is a solution. Death is not a solution. I mean, the medical system and medical technology is designed for one purpose, and that is to leverage our knowledge and our skill to protect and preserve life. And we're turning it on its head. And as the culture loses its conscience, so does medicine along with it. But medical professionals of believing medical professionals who understand what it means to be human, they know that they've got to stand strong in a very difficult culture. They're getting tremendous pressure to participate in these life-ending procedures.
Yeah. Brother Jim Harden with us here today on Crosstalk, and we often people think about the surgical abortions, but there is a tidal wave going on right now on chemical abortions, and I'd like to talk about this abortion pill, which is really being shipped all over the country. It's now been reported that the FDA recently approved a generic abortion pill. These are going across state lines where abortion is forbidden. Let's dissect this aspect of the abortion pill. It is creating huge havoc across this nation.
It really is. The abortion pill is testing the limits of states' rights and is also testing the limit of how far the federal government is willing to go to enforce laws currently on the books. I think, I think of the Comstock Act in particular, where it's illegal, and it's been ratified and modified even as late as the 1990s. People say it's a Victorian-era bill that's totally morally out of date, which is ridiculous, of course, because I think the Constitution is a Victorian-era document. You look at the role of the federal government and the DOJ. Their goal is to enforce the laws duly enacted by the legislature. Well, the Comstock Act says you shouldn't ship these drugs or any paraphernalia related to abortion across U.S. borders or state lines. Chemical abortion does that all the time, every day. Virtually every instance of chemical abortion represents a violation of the Comstock Act. And any violation of the Comstock Act comes with $250,000 fines per violation. And this comes also with 5 years in jail per violation, with racketeering charges, which is triple damages if you can find that other people participated. And I know for a fact that letters have been sent to other organizations, including UPS, USPS, et cetera, saying, look, you could be perceived as a co-conspirator to violate federal law when you're shipping these drugs for these companies, like Aid Access, or these chemical abortion purveyors in New York State illegally shipping these drugs to pro-life states like Texas and Louisiana. So you've got Letitia James, Attorney General in New York, and Ken Paxton, Attorney General of Texas, going at it, saying, okay, we've got states' rights issues. We have the right as a state to pass our own legislation and pass our own laws and enforce those laws, and you are basically spitting in our face. We have, so this is a key moment in the history of not just abortion, but in the history of what it means to be states and their sovereignty.
Friends, we're going to take a quick break here. We're up against our 1 minute break. We're talking today with Brother Jim Harden, President and CEO of CompassCare Pregnancy Services in New York, and discussing today the war on the unborn. We are going to go further into this matter of the abortion pill, and now a generic abortion pill getting approved by the FDA. And it's not only the babies' lives that are being killed, but women are damaging their lives, and many complications, many hospitalizations. We'll be back in a minute here on Crosstalk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, did the Ice Age really happen?
Yes, indeed, Chris. There's a great deal of evidence that the Ice Age really happened. It wasn't long ago. It was at the end of Noah's flood. It probably took several hundred years for the Earth to settle back down into the equilibrium we now experience. That readjustment period was primarily the Ice Age. The real key for the Ice Age is more evaporation from the ocean waters, making huge storms of snowfall possible. But the continents were cold, making the storms violent and prolonged. Also, late in the flood was a time of great volcanism, meaning that the Earth's atmosphere was cloudy and shielded the Earth from the sun. So there was more snowfall, less snow melt, and the ice built up. This would have happened in the centuries following the flood. And that's the flood mentioned back in Genesis.
Thanks, Dr. John. For more information, visit us on the web at icr.org. I'm Chris O'Brien. Thanks for tuning in.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Our topic today, the war on the unborn. With us today is the president and CEO of CompassCare Pregnancy Services in New York, Jim Harden. And brother, you've got, is it now, since we're heard in New York City as well, you've got, 3 there in that area? So is it Staten Island, Buffalo, and Bronx?
We've got 6. We've
6.
got Buffalo, Rochester, Albany, the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Staten Island.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, 3 in the New York City area.
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
Very good. And let's. I'd like to hit several more things on the pill here. We know that so many were troubled when all of a sudden the news came out that the FDA had just approved a generic abortion pill. How did that happen? Wasn't Secretary Kennedy launching an investigation and to the whole way in which the abortion pill got authorized and allowed to spread across? How did this generic abortion drug get approved?
That is the million-dollar question. You just described some of the backstory, which is one of the reasons why people are so confused and upset, because we've been saying for years in the kind of pregnancy center movement that chemical abortion is very dangerous and it harms women. The data shows that it harms women. Our lived experience is saying it demonstrates that it harms women. And then we had this study that came out a few months ago that said more than 1 in 10 women who start the chemical abortion process wind up in the emergency room. And so Secretary Kennedy at HHS, along with Dr. Marty Makary at FDA, said this is very disconcerting, and when they're going to go back to the drawing board and take a look, do a very deep dive in terms of the safety of chemical abortion, also known as mifepristone. And so that's what they were doing. Meanwhile, a day before the government shuts down, a generic version of this drug out of a company known, I think it's called Evita, was approved for sale on the market, which is like, what? Wait, is this just a bureaucratic oversight, or is this something more insidious? Just before the government shutdown, somebody just put some pro-abortion bureaucrat at the FDA just sends a jab out there, making a statement, or is it just something like, okay, the bureaucratic government is just so bloated and nobody knows really what's going on, and the chemical abortion's already been approved, and so this is just pro forma. This is just another way for them to no big deal kind of thing. Nothing to see here. Well, it is a big deal when you're talking about 1 in 10 women going to the emergency room with sepsis, hemorrhaging, and possible death. And we have several issues of women dying because of this, because they're not diagnosing pregnancy when they send these drugs to women. They're not diagnosing whether or not she's got anemia, which means she'd be contraindicated for receiving such a drug. They're not diagnosing whether the pregnancy is located in the uterus and not in the fallopian tubes, right, which is an ectopic pregnancy. So none of it, and furthermore, these chemical abortion companies are telling women when they get these drugs that if they have any complications, to go to the emergency room and lie to their doctors and tell them they're miscarrying. So the Charlotte-Lozier Institute did a study of all these health insurance records, and they found that 80% of the women that were going to the emergency room with complications of chemical abortion were being miscoded as miscarriages.
Wow!
And so we're seeing miscarriage inflation going to the roof, and it's all because you got a rabid pro-abortion, political dynamic that's willing to sacrifice women on the altar of their power.
Yeah. So women are not being told the truth in this, and yet you're trying to tell women the truth, and you are being targeted right now by the Attorney General of New York.
Yeah, it's quite ironic that she is suing us for business fraud. Okay? What we do is we're a nonprofit organization. We provide free emergency medical care to women who start the chemical abortion process and have changed their mind and want to reverse the effects. Now, if we can catch it within 72 hours, we can reverse the effects and help her have a healthy baby. But she wants to shut us down, saying that we're lying to women about the dangers of chemical abortion. We're lying. We're telling them the truth. We're providing informed consent. And she's saying, well, we don't know how it's never been proven that progesterone therapy, which is what we use, is not going to be harmful to her or her baby. Well, let me just say that progesterone is the natural hormone that a woman's body makes in order to sustain a pregnancy. It's progestational hormone. In order to continue to gestate the baby, to provide the baby nutrients, etc., she's got to have progesterone, right? So Letitia James, Attorney General of New York, is saying we don't know how dangerous progesterone is. Not a single human being on the face of the planet would ever exist, apart from Adam and Eve, if it wasn't for progesterone. It's not about safety. It's about eliminating progesterone. That's what mifepristone, the dangerous chemical abortion drug, actually does. It blocks progesterone. All we do is simply overwhelm the effects with more natural progesterone. It makes perfect sense. The FDA agrees with us, by the way. There are 11 other peer-reviewed medical journal articles that agree with us also. We're the ones doing the right thing. We're the ones that are taking the moral high ground. We're the ones providing them with choice, and she wants to rob them of true choice. And emergency care at that. I found it a little ironic, too, that Letitia James is suing us for business fraud when, in fact, she's the one under an indictment for a 40-year pattern of business fraud.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel a little sorry for her, but the reality is she's doing an injustice. She's weaponizing one of the largest attorney general's offices in the nation against peaceful pro-life people that want to provide free care to women in crisis. And it needs to stop. By the way, it's a violation, according to our attorneys. She is intentionally conspiring to violate our constitutional rights, our freedom of speech and freedom of religion. So we're saying that this is a clear case. We've got essentially three lawsuits now. The judge, here's a little wrinkle that's interesting. She looked to appeal our case to change the venue to Manhattan. We don't have operations in Manhattan. She wants to change the venue of our case to Manhattan. She's judge shopping specifically for the judges that she thinks will give her a better judgment, similarly to what happened to President Trump.
Wow. Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America, and you see the intensity of this war on the unborn right now. And I don't know if you have numbers, brother, but I've seen reports up to 700,000 are killed by chemical abortion every year here in the United States. Is that close, or what do we know?
It's probably close. It's likely more than that because it's very difficult to know how many of these drugs are being shipped. Mm-hmm. We know for a fact that they ship multiple doses to one woman, even though she's only asking for one dose. We also know that they're shipping these drugs to people who are not the women who are pregnant, like, for example, men or older women. So there's a trafficking element that's going on here. We know also for a fact that women are being tricked and induced to getting abortions through like, for example, drinks. There's so much evil going on here that's subterranean, below the surface of the political debate that the Democrats just don't want to talk about. This drug essentially facilitates. It is the glove that covers the fingerprints of the sex trafficking industry. Very disconcerting, and it really needs to be monitored, not just for the sake of women's health, because it's so damaging, but also for their very lives.
Yeah, and I saw in one state, and maybe I don't know if it's New York or where, but you said they're keeping the name of the patient from being on the pill bottle and the name of the prescribing physician.
Yeah, they are. That is New York. That's New York.
Right.
And by the way, the first person to recommend this was Elizabeth Warren out of Massachusetts. She said we need to change the directions on the bottle of misoprostol, which is the second drug in the abortion drug regimen, to refer to miscarriage treatment. Miscarriage treatment.
Oh my!
This isn't miscarriage treatment. This is abortion, plain and simple.
Right.
Let's not conflate the two. You're not protecting the women. You're all you're doing is looking to protect the abortion industry and the quack doctors that participate in it, like Margaret Carpenter out of New York City, who is illicitly shipping these drugs across state lines to places like Texas and Louisiana and harming women. To women that are not even seeking the abortion pill, they're giving it to other women, their daughters, so they don't want to be pregnant. Very illegal things are going on. Yeah. I mean, and this is just outside of the bounds of traditional medical ethics too. Say nothing of the fact that it's a violation of current law.
Liberty Counsel Action is also pointing out that these pills and the hazardous medical waste is going right into our water supply.
That's true.
That'd be concerning to all of us.
Oh, it's quite sickening. Essentially, they're turning every woman's bathroom or dorm room into an abortion clinic. Mm-hmm. I mean, and so the remains of the child are going right down the toilet. I know that sounds grotesque, and it is. But the fact of the matter is our water supply treatment systems are not designed to handle that level of hazardous human waste. And it's going, so this is something that is not being addressed. at all, to my knowledge. And we talk about the Democrats, want people to have a right to clean water. Well, who doesn't want clean water? Well, you're not going to have clean water if you're having to process the remains of human lives into your water system. Let's just think about this. I mean, one of my kids asked me about that particular question, and they said, "Does that mean that our whole society is kind of like, a form of cannibalism?" And I said, "Well, I don't know how it actually processes through the water supply, but gosh, it's terrible to think of it that way."
Right.
So we need to have a concerted discussion at the national and state level about the ramifications of chemical abortion. We need to think this through from start to finish, because it's doing no one any good for us to just sit and pontificate. There are real problems happening because of chemical abortion all throughout this country and world that are not being addressed by the medical community or by politicians currently in position of power.
And friends, how sad the stories. I mean, they come through regularly about the women who have had this abortion pill slipped into their food or into their drink, and the complications, and not to mention, again, the life of their preborn child, but then complications for them as well. And, that really boils down to the bigger question here is, what kind of culture are we becoming with mail-order death instruments that we're just so easily to put in the mail and to put into the hands of individuals that its sole purpose is to take the life of another.
Yes, it's barbaric. You talk about heart-wrenching stories. There was a man that was trying to kill the child that he and his wife conceived, and he tried on multiple occasions to slip these chemical abortion drugs into her drink. She actually did drink one of the drinks and ended up in the emergency room. And the child was born premature, 10 weeks, but survived, thankfully. Now this man was facing charges, and I believe he's going to go to prison for 7 years. But a lot of people said that's not enough. I mean, he tried killing his own child on multiple occasions, and he's only getting 7 years in jail. Obviously they're divorced now, but this is a very disconcerting kind of trend. This is not unfortunately, it's not an anomaly. There's been studies of women that have been trafficked. And yes, their handlers, I'm using air quotes here, their handlers forced them to get abortions. How many of them, I want to say the number was 60% of the minors reported having been forced to get abortions so that the handlers can keep their product on the street. This is the kind of human trafficking and slavery that's going on in America. America is the biggest consumer of sex trafficking in the world. And it's subterranean. Again, it's underground. It's mercurial. It's disgusting. And somehow or other, we need to bring to light. Ephesians, the Apostle Paul says, we need to expose the evil deeds of darkness.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing right now. And my hope is that the people in America wake up to the tragedy that's happening right under their nose every single minute of every day.
James Harden with us here today on Crosstalk. A quick break. And friends, in our next segment, we're going to get into some other important aspects as well, and that is the expanding right now of IVF. We're going to get also into what's happening in Milwaukee, where an abortion clinic is securing names, asking the public to help them name their aspirator, a machine that will be used to suck off the arms and legs of infant children. We'll be back in a minute here on Crosstalk.
When the government uses COVID-19 edicts to restrict the gathering of the church, 3 pastors face the risk of imprisonment and fines while courageously reopening their churches in a world filled with chaos and fear. The Essential Church documentary tells the true stories of 3 churches during 2020 lockdowns. Follow their journey as they take a stand in defiance of the government using scientific, legal, and biblical perspectives to uphold their positions. The Essential Church is available on DVD for a donation of $12, or the Essential Church set for a donation of $20. The set includes Blu-ray and a DVD, along with multiple bonus features including extended interview excerpts, teasers, trailers, and more. The set also comes with a companion 70-page full-color hardcover book, taking you behind the scenes of making this movie. Call VCY 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. The war and the unborn are topic today. With us today, Jim Harden, President and CEO of CompassCare Pregnancy Services in New York. And Brother Harden, just before we continue on with our topics, just give us a word about CompassCare, the CompassCare centers, and your website as well for our listeners.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, CompassCare provides baseline OB care to women facing unplanned pregnancy in the abortion capital of the world, New York and New York City. If people would like to learn more about how they can help a woman and her baby, go to CompassCareCommunity.com. That's CompassCareCommunity.com.
And friends, you'll learn more about their centers. And again, as many of you listening in the New York City area and with Staten Island and Bronx and Brooklyn, facilities there, and New York City has just been atrocious on this matter of abortion. I'm so thankful that these pro-life centers are there to make a difference. We have seen October 1, where President Trump has, through executive order, stopping Medicare dollars going into or Medicaid dollars going back to states or to organizations that are promoting abortion, such as Planned Parenthood. Right now, we have a shutdown of Planned Parenthood in Wisconsin while they're assessing their steps. And I appreciate many actions President Trump has taken, but there's a great concern, Brother Harden, over his recent plan to expand IVF. Share that issue with us, if you would.
Yeah, IVF. You know, a lot of people look at IVF and think, wow, that must be pro-life. That must be a wonderful technology to help families have children. And so, you know, we take a look at IVF in terms of the medical technology, and it is basically the medical Wild West, totally unregulated. And what they do, the process is to create embryos, multiple embryos. And based on the data, it's a very unreliable process. IVF, in vitro fertilization, essentially creates 10 embryos for every one child that survives. And the survival, process is sometimes when they create these embryos, they intentionally destroy them. They cull them, C-U-L-L, or they don't survive implantation, or they don't survive the freezing process because the ones that aren't used are frozen. And there's now over 1 million estimated frozen embryos that are not they have no place or no room to grow in. And so, we look at this as kind of like the next generation of human ownership. We're creating humanity and brokering deals with other technology companies to create humanity for the purpose of giving someone a child. Again, the child is not the problem. When these babies are born, they are, of course, they're all, from the moment that they become embryos. From the moment the male gamete meets the female gamete, you're talking about a new and unique, fully human embryo, and they have to be protected. And that's exactly what the Alabama Supreme Court said when there was this case where one of the freezers broke and destroyed many of the embryos from these two couples. They sued them for wrongful death, and the Supreme Court in Alabama said, "You're right. There was a wrongful death. Whose wrongful death? The wrongful death of these children, these embryos in the freezer." And so everybody on the left lost their mind because personhood rights were, the right to be protected under law were being extended to these embryos, as well as they should have, because they're made in the image of God. And so we need to put some regulations on this. And some of the concerns that we have about President Trump, pushing forward on this IVF development, is that it's the creation of human embryos for the purpose of the sale of these babies to these parents is a form of slavery and dehumanizing, in a way that needs to be regulated. If not, I believe we need to put a moratorium on IVF all around the country so that we can actually understand what's going on. And I've said this before in my Newsmax columns and to people in positions of policy setting. We do have ideas. And I think that some of these ideas would be very helpful to because look, if you think about just the numbers, preborn boys and girls, we have to think differently now about humanity, because typically we thought about humanity as being at the earliest stages in form of pregnancy. A woman is with child when she's pregnant. Now there's the woman's not there, but the child exists. So now what? You still have to find a way to protect that child. And so technology is forcing us to change our way of thinking and behaving around the earliest of human life. And it's important for us to make sure we get this right, because it's incumbent upon us to protect all human life equally.
You know, I'd like to hit a couple things from the state of Wisconsin that are going on. We have an abortion facility right here in our city that reportedly is raising money by taking submissions from the public, a $10 donation, to name their new aspirator. I mean, the sole purpose of this machine is to abort children. The machine is going to be used to suck off the arms and legs of children developing in the womb, and they want people to name this for a donation. And the post said this: think of the bragging rights, street cred, and the boost on your resume when you tell everyone you named an abortion machine. And I thought, this is both ironic and outrageous. They want you to name a machine while denying a name to an unborn child.
What are they going to call this machine? The Grim Reaper? I mean, it's uncanny that they would have this contest right before Halloween. This is the level of sickness that you're dealing with. We're not dealing with true medical systems. We're not dealing with actual doctors. There's a reason why the original Hippocratic Oath said, "I will not give a woman an abortive remedy." Before any doctor would practice medicine independently, he'd have to take this oath and say those words: "I will not give a woman an abortive remedy." Why? Because the purpose of medicine is to heal and to maintain the health of the individual. And when you're serving a woman, you're serving two patients, the woman and the baby. And so the height or the depth of quackery is abortion.
Yeah.
It is the opposite of medical care.
There's another outrageous thing going on as well in Wisconsin, and the NewAmerican.com reports of what's happening in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where the city council voted to require the city's Sustainability Commission to draft a non-binding rights of nature resolution. And we know this is happening in other places too, but asserts that nature has legal right equivalent to those of human beings. We're talking rivers and wetlands, forests, and other, quote, living communities as being legal persons that hold the right to exist, flourish, and be defended in a court of law. And again, there is greater protection for these, a wetland or a river or forest, than a human life in the womb.
Yeah, and you know what this means? These kinds of, dogs are people too kinds of movements, is that it doesn't actually raise the rights of a nature, an aspect of nature, or a dog or any kind of animal to human rights. It actually has the effect of reducing human rights. And so it actually chokes off the ability for humans to do what they're designed to do. And so at some point in time, it's going to, we're choking off humanity because of these various rights we're affording to non-human entities. Was it going to be against the law for a woman to have, more than the government allotted number of children? Is it going to be against the law? Are we going to create a birth interval? You can't have more than 2 children in the interval of 2 years or 3 years. And what happens if that's violated? Are you going to be sanctioned? Are you going to be fined? Are you going to lose your rights to health care? These are the kinds of things that have been done before in other countries. And when you start to personify in terms of legal status non-human entities, you're essentially attacking humanity. Let's just be honest about that. And that's, in a sense, what's going to happen is it becomes a legal attack on the rights of humans.
Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America, and there is so much going on that we address this war on the unborn today. But, Brother Harden, some of these attacks are coming from religious circles. I just saw a story recently, LifeSiteNews.com reported of a recently ordained, and I put that in quotes, minister by the name of Kent Kaufman, a self-described queer. They report that he said that actually killing babies protects the life of children because there are so many children that currently exist in the world that were forced to be born because of legislation. The report said that many children have grown up into an unsupportive, unhealthy, and right-challenging household that hasn't been a life that any child should live. And so being in favor of reproductive choice helps the life of children everywhere because they don't have to grow up in a world that dislikes them because they simply exist. Now, it's my position that this is a hireling, a wolf in sheep's clothing, How do you respond to this mentality from this self-described queer recently ordained?
Oh, yeah. Basically, this is a way that the left has been using for the last several years. What they're doing is they're trying to Christianize socialist or left-leaning progressive concepts. And so, if they can demonstrate that you've got, bona fide, I'm using air quotes here again, ministers of the gospel, so to speak, proclaiming the opposite perspective that Christians have held for forever, for decades, for generations, for millennium, that human life is the crown of creation and deserves to be blessed and protected, that we're made in His image, that we're, these, if they can demonstrate that other Christians hold different views, then they can undermine or make it illegal for pro-life Christians to hold their public positions, whether it be through pregnancy care work or through pro-life sermons or through sidewalk advocacy. These kinds of things will be outlawed. It's already happening in places like New York. So this is a wolf clearly in sheep's clothing. And by the way, when Paul talks about a wolf in sheep's clothing, he actually referred to them as people coming in through the church. Mm-hmm. People oftentimes think about wolves coming in from the outside. No, these are people coming in from they are already on the inside. And so it's incumbent upon Christians of true faith, faithful believers who are faithful to the revealed Word of God, to stand up against these imposters. That's why we're called to be awake and alert. We're called to be watchmen. This is the kind of belief and ideology and person that seeks to destroy humanity, and that's what Satan has come to do. Yeah. He is the great liar. He is the father of lies, and he's come to steal, kill, and destroy. Yep. And who and what? Well, the crown of creation, of course.
Friends, I'm opening our phone lines today. If you have a question for our guest or a brief comment, our phone number here, 800-733-9829. We're discussing the war and the unborn. Our number, 800-733-9829. We are just 2 weeks away, as of this live program here today, 2 weeks away from the November 4th elections happening in a number of locations. And I know you're watching very closely what is happening with New York City mayor race, also New Jersey governor, Virginia governor. These are important races coming up here on the November 4th ballot.
Incredibly important. I'm looking at the New York City race because with extreme interest, because as goes New York City in many respects, so goes the rest of New York State. And New York State is a bellwether, of progressive Democrat bellwether for the rest of the country. They introduce concepts and ideas and policies here in New York that are so crazy that if they don't work, they'll send them to California and see if they can't get them to work there. And then they'll force these issues through not the legislature, but a complicit judiciary. That's one of the ways, of course, that the left has gotten their agenda into mainstream America. It hasn't been through legislature. It has not been through, the appropriate representative means that are afforded to us through the Constitution. It's been by force through the judiciary, and that's exactly how abortion came to be. So we're very concerned about Mondami becoming mayor of New York because he's very pro-abortion, and we're watching that very carefully.
Friends, we're going to take a quick break. Our lines are all packed, so we'll come to your phone calls afterwards. Our guest today, the website, CompassCareCommunity.com. CompassCareCommunity.com. Back in a minute here on Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Sadly, replacement theology is running rampant through Christian circles all around the world. It's the belief that God is done with the nation of Israel. And yet we know the Bible tells us that his mercies to them are irrevocable. He will finish his plan with them. But yet, many reject that. They say the church has replaced Israel. No, that's not in the Bible. And in fact, did you know that in the New Jerusalem that comes down out of heaven, as described in Revelation chapter 21, it says that the walls of the 12 gate towers that are in the walls around the New Jerusalem, that are part of the new heaven and the new earth, have the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And then it goes on to say that the 12 foundations have the names of the 12 apostles who gave us the foundation of the church. Here you see God's distinct program for the Jews who become believers and the church. God's word is true.
Our topic today, the war on the unborn. With us is Reverend Jim Harden, President and CEO of CompassCare Pregnancy Services in New York. And friends, so much at stake across this nation. And the question is, what kind of culture are we raising up? And what are we doing as Christian families and moms and dads and churches to address the sanctity of human life? Let's go to the phone lines. They are packed. We're going to begin with Ruby in New Mexico. Hi, Ruby. You're on the air.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you, Jim, the second Jim, for being an earth angel. I actually feel physically sick listening to this scenario of the abortion stuff being in the water. My question is it still viable in the water when women drink it? Will they get like the same after effects as if they just taken it off the shelf? What's the shelf life of this stuff in the water? Is it ever going to dissipate?
Yeah, and I think that. Thank you for that question. And Brother Harden, I believe this is what you're saying. We need to have a conversation. We need to have scientific analysis of this. And this is where Liberty Counsel, Matt Staver, and Liberty Counsel Action is saying we've got to get down to the bottom of this, because these chemicals, and not to mention that, but also the unborn babies themselves that are being flushed down into the drain sewer system. This is all out there. We've got to have a lot of questions answered here.
Oh, without a doubt, exactly. These are the questions that are unanswered that can be answered. These are the EPA, et cetera, are designed to answer questions just like this. One of the biggest concerns that we have, also along with the chemical abortion problem in the water system, water treatment process, is the water system being saturated also with abortifacient steroidal contraception, which has major ramifications on the fertility of both men and women. Yeah. So, and that's basically, we know for a fact that those particular steroids are designed to, not break down, even while they're being processed through a human liver. So, we've got significant concerns about what's going on in the water supply.
Yeah, so Ruby, there's not solid answers on this yet, but there are groups that are, they're pushing the EPA, pushing even legislation in the House and Senate to get things going on this issue. Very troubling.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the call. Let's go next to Tomo, Wisconsin. Tom, you're on the air.
Yes, I'd just like to say to all the feminists and women's rights people who are pro-abortion, 46% of live births are women, are girls. So therefore, 46% of the time they're killing a girl. What's that? Where is that girl's right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good point.
There's a big problem across the world in certain countries like China and India and places, even in America, where, people are gender selecting with respect to abortion. They want to have a boy. And so, they're killing their girls. And statistically, over the course of these many years that we've been watching fertility, it's girls that tend to have a higher birth rate than boys. Girls tend to make it through birth naturally, better than boys statistically. So, the fact that the numbers are down for girls means that there's a significant trend to essentially cull the girls out of the population. Very, very dangerous and very disgusting.
Our next caller is from Phoenix, Arizona. Dave, you're on the air.
Hello, Jim. I was wondering if you can tell me if what some of us old people can do to help out.
Okay, great question, Brother Harden.
Oh, I would say number one, when Jesus said, when he was asked about the current events of the day, terrible tragedy going on with respect to Jews being killed and their blood being mingled with the sacrifices, and tragic events like a Tower of Siloam falling and killing 18 people. What do you think about that, Jesus? And he said, the first thing we ought to do when we see these terrible things happening is repent. Otherwise, we will all likewise perish. And I think that should be our first heart posture. The second thing I think is talk to your friends, your family, your neighbors about what it means to be human and the value of human life and their value. The Bible says that children are a reward. Everyone at some point in time was a child. That means that everyone is a reward. God sees us and values us infinitely by virtue of the shed blood of Christ. And so I would say talk about it. Talk about it to your friends, your family, neighbors. Pray. Get involved at a pregnancy resource center. Give, if you can, give money to these various organizations. There's all sorts of things that you can do. And I would say be creative as well. whatever the Lord puts on your heart, explore it a little bit with some other friends, and see if you can't get involved in those ways as well.
Yeah, and Dave, I'm confident you have pregnancy resource centers right there in Phoenix to reach out and call, support them as you can. They will accept things from finances to diapers to baby formula and other items as well. Thank you for the call. George in Ohio, you're on the air.
Yeah, this is George Yankee from Geneva, Ohio. Calling about this, which is mistakenly called abortion, is actually murder. Until we change our language and put it out there like it is, the truth, and to these women, too, that are coming in for help, tell them that it's murder. You're murdering your unborn child.
Thank you, George. What do you think, Brother Harden?
Oh, George is right. George, when you end in the life of a preborn child, we as a nation have been systematically euphemizing our words around what it actually is. We've been sterilizing our language so that people will say, "Oh, there's nothing to see here." It's not about induced pregnancy termination or women's reproductive health or any of that. The bottom line is it's baby killing.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line.
Thank you, George. Appreciate that. And we have just a minute left, but we're going to squeeze Lily in from Tucson, Arizona. You're on the air.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen, for the work you're doing to sound the warning. I have two viewpoints. One is in Arizona, we do a lot of reclaimed water, and that also goes into mainly like parks, watering parks and golf courses and stuff like that. And I'm just wondering what the long-range effects of not only the chemicals that they're using, but also what you just spoke about, which is almost really sickening to hear and think about, running all these aborted babies through the reclamation system. Beyond comprehension.
It is beyond comprehension. I wish we had time further. We're down to just a quarter minute. Brother Harden, what would you like to leave with our listeners today?
I would like to say, it's important for us to stay focused on the Lord. In the face of tremendous evil, the Lord asks us to have his heart in support of the weak and the oppressed, of the orphan and the widow, and to learn to do good, to seek justice. And that's, I think, is required of all of us, whatever that might mean for you and your community. It's important for us to reclaim society, to re-civilize order. And to do that, we must focus on God first and our fellow man.
Thank you for being with us today. Friends, the website, CompassCareCommunity.com. God bless you, friends. Thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.